Jimmy Lai was a worried man. It was late spring 2020 and Hong Kong people had almost entirely withdrawn support for the anti-China movement that he'd been financing and encouraging with help from foreign forces. What to do? The answer, he decided, was right in front of him. A US government anti-China hawk named Christian Witten had earlier advised him to focus on sending out his message to English-speaking audiences. And Lai realised that was what he had to do. He had little choice. His only real remaining backers were the US government and Western mainstream news organisations. So he typed out a message to his colleagues. He wrote, "Our only support is from the foreign community. We don't have any support here." Now that was in May 2020, although there had been large demonstrations in Hong Kong the previous year, when people were told, incorrectly, that a G7 proposed extradition amendment was really a Beijing plot to snatch dissidents from the city. The numbers of supporters had dropped dramatically as the real facts had become known, and the protests had become excessively violent and anti-Chinese. But now in the late spring of 2020, the HSBC bank accounts which had been used to pay the few remaining valiant protesters had been frozen. Valiant was a code name for protesters willing to be violent. And violent they were, with hundreds of acts of arson and vandalism. Also, the pandemic meant no one wanted to be on the streets anyway. Worse still, Apple Daily was a financial disaster, losing $1 million a week. Its advertising sales agents were claiming it sold 86,000 copies a day, which was barely above 1% of Hong Kong's population. Yet Western media was still claiming it was Hong Kong's most popular news outlet, although that was not true, and in fact had never been true. Lai knew he had to switch focus to Western governments and media, so he wrote to colleagues, "Their support is our salvation." Where does this story come from? Jimmy Lai has been on the witness stand in a Kowloon courtroom this week and last, and has been talking about events from the spring of 2020. He basically did three things, the court heard. In May, he launched an online English version of Apple Daily. He told staff he did not want journalistic balance. It would only share, quote, negative news about China. The US had long weaponized human rights as an anti-China tool, and Apple's English operation would follow that strategy. Jimmy Lai set up a WhatsApp group called English News to make clear the aim of the project. He wrote a message saying that the mainstream media in the US had declared support for the movement, so the time was ripe to reach out to their readers and, quote, make them the leverage between Apple Daily and American politics. Why did he want to reach more American politicians? Well, Apple Daily publisher Cheung Kim Hong told an earlier hearing that Lai wanted to inflame anti-Chinese sentiments in the West to prompt them to instigate sanctions. But Jimmy Lai, in court on Monday this week, denied this, saying that his former colleague made it up. But Lai did admit that he wrote a message saying he wanted to prompt the US government to take action. But he denied that this proved he wanted sanctions. "I did not think about anything in particular," he told the court. Lai took a second step westwards too, but less enthusiastically. Former US intelligence officer Mark Simon told Lai that he needed to start an account on Twitter, a largely English language website popular in the West, where Simon said there were, quote, many people we want to reach. Lai replied that he was reluctant to start a social media account as it was a time-consuming activity. But Simon pressed on, replying, "I'm not one that recommends you tweet every day like Trump, but it is a great tool for debate and a political confrontation." Lai was a huge fan of Donald Trump, so decided to go ahead. To make it easier for him, staff member Simon Lee Chow Fu was commissioned to do all the ancillary activities such as managing the follows and reposts, the court heard. Lai told the court, "I never knew how to follow somebody," so he followed accounts based on his own judgment. On his first day on Twitter, Jimmy Lai wrote a tweet praising Trump. President Trump remarked, "Hong Kong's gone through a lot. Rarely have Hong Kong people heard more sympathetic words about their plight. Coming from the most powerful leader of the world means a lot." A third element in the new strategy was to run a campaign to tell readers to write letters to the White House. Jimmy Lai wrote a note to his colleagues, "I hope it'll work because foreign support, especially American support, is our only salvation at this time of crisis. Now, the US used the negative narrative to launch numerous sanctions on Hong Kong people and change the city's trade status, damaging its ability to do business internationally. Now, all this information I've just shared comes from the most recent hearings, but the court heard a series of revelations last week too, which I've written about in print. I'll just do a quick recap of 4 of them briefly. Number 1, the US White House sent confidential information directly to Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, the court heard. Number 2, Jimmy Lai was invited to a top-level meeting in Washington, D.C. with former CIA Director Mike Pompeo and notorious war hawk John Bolton, it was revealed to the court. Number 3, Jimmy Lai demanded that no negative news about US President Donald Trump was to be printed in Apple Daily, the court was told. And number 4, Jimmy Lai also revealed that some years ago he met US officials in Taiwan who introduced him to Tsai Ing-wen long before she became the US allied leader on that Chinese island. Interesting stuff. Jimmy Lai, 76, is on trial for sedition and collusion with foreign forces, offences which are illegal worldwide. His colleagues and associates have pleaded guilty already in related hearings. Jimmy Lai's trial continues today. Peace.